Hello, everyone. Welcome. It is with a great pleasure that I welcome you all to the second annual Latin America Future Summit. I am Letitia Boateng, Events Lead and Operational Analyst for Global Startup Ecosystem. Today's event promises to be exciting, and we couldn't have done this without our possible lineup of speakers, the GSC team, and our able lineup of partners. And of course, not forgetting our global audience. The theme for this year is the investment ecosystem of the future and of the Latin America. And this session promises to be exciting, educational, and interactive. To help me do this is Daniel Tete, who is the Startup Ecosystem Manager and the Global Manager at GSC, and he is going to get ready to step in. So before he steps in, let's take a look at last year's recap video.
Wherever you're joining in from, thank you for joining us as we explore the theme Future Tech Hubs of Latin America with this first annual Latin America Future Summit.
Each country in LATAM has a different reality, so we need to work closely with the operators, with the government, with the universities to really develop a strong ecosystem.
So, it's not about how small you are, it's just understanding the opportunity and equipping yourself with the tools to take advantage of those opportunities.
So I realized that if there is not a skill in the market, I needed to begin to do something to have that skill if I want to grow in the future.
So we are willing to hear these innovations, and we would like to partnership with these kind of companies.
You see that the business world today, brands face new types of customers with high digital capabilities.
Objective, our mission is to make sure everybody that want to have a job should have a job. And not any type of job, but what we call a decent job, a job with quality. So
the industry-specific solutions have unquestionably become the cloud's next big revolution.
Alter Global is an early-stage venture capital firm investing in emerging market startups, pre-seed through Series A, in Latin America, the Middle East.
And there's a lot of talent, right? I think we're catching up on that, and we are also demonstrating that we have the right culture, the right talent, and the right ingenuity, right, for making those change happen.
Hello and welcome once again. I would like to give a brief welcome remark and welcome you all to this Latin America Future Summit. My name is Daniel Tete. I'm the Startup Programs and Projects Manager here at Global Startup Ecosystem. This year we come to you with the second annual Latin America Future Summit, which is an initiative that is hosted by the Global Startup Ecosystem in partnership with Google Cloud, AWS, IBM Cloud, HubSpot, and many more. We have an exciting lineup of speakers for you this year, and it promises to be an exciting time if you stay with us throughout the session. As usual, you can access this live feed via Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, and the live networking on Zoom via all our social channels. To kick things off, I'd like to give a brief information about the Latin America Future Summit. This Latin America Future Summit, it's curating an active network of Latin America's investors, tech entrepreneurs, politicians, and business moguls. Each year, the program gathers thousands of pioneers from across Latin America and around the world to address and tackle issues that affect Latin America's future. And this summit serves as a platform to influencers who are sourcing innovative solutions and partners that leverage exponential technology to accelerate Latin America as the world's final tech frontier hub. We are driven by three main pillars at GSC. These ecosystem pillars of engagement drives all our programming and our projects within all the countries we operate in. These three pillars include entrepreneurship, employment, and education. Under the entrepreneurship pillar, we have supported and launched the and supported the launch of accelerators, tech summits, and tech initiatives in numerous countries. Under the employment pillar, we host career workshops and personal development sessions on a regular basis. We have one of the largest databases of tech talent in the world. And we host these vertical and topic related issues in nationwide digital career accelerator programs all over the world. Under the education pillar, we conduct workshops, boot camps, and webinars to prepare participants for the digital age. At GSC, we have over 200 tech summit brands that serve different countries and industry verticals. And we launch new brands from the portfolio based on demand and growing global partnership. We believe that every country in the world will prioritize tech as a central component of the nation's economic and social development to be competitive in today's digital society. Also, to support this accelerating trend, we position ourselves to remain at the forefront of institutional training and planning at the government level in many countries across the world. This is the second annual Latin America Future Summit. The first annual we launched the first annual summit last year as a digital program where we brought about 15 speakers, 1,000 delegates with the support of global partners across the world. And we returned this year with a similar lineup of speakers. This year we have 20 speakers and an estimated 2,500 digital delegates who registered for this event. Previous speakers under our program may include Jack Dorsey, the late Jovenel Moise, who is the former president of Haiti, Michelle Saison, Ben Horowitz, Tim Draper, Vicky JD, Jay Perry, Ziozen, Ndaba Mandela, and Sophia the Celebrity Robot. Previous speakers that spoke at the Latin America Future Summit last year include David Pardo, Christine Intim, Iris Hoffman of IDB, Petya of Google, Carlos Francisco of SAP Frontier, and Enzo Zuni of Ericsson, among many others. We are supported by our global network of partners who support our programming, which include Google Cloud, IBM Cloud, HubSpot, Go with Google, AWS, Africa Future Fund, our Metaverse Times, and Meventum. This year's speakers include speakers from the International Labour Organization, HubSpot, Unilever, the Sustainable Travel International, among many others. We promise an exciting time today where all these speakers will bring their thought leadership to bear and share their experiences to entrepreneurs and business moguls alike. For this year's speakers, I'd like to just take you through the numbers, the highlights of the speakers that we have here, including Vinicius Pinero, who is a senior official at the International Labour Organization, Christine Tim, who is the CEO of the Global Startup Ecosystem, Shirley Purcell of HubSpot, Viviana Alvarez of Sanchez, who was previously with Unilever, John Bruno, who is with the International Ecotourism Society, and Paloma Zapata, who is a Sustainable Travel International. This also includes Angelina Ramos of the IDB Social Hub, Carolina Caro of leadership, who is a leadership coach and also at the Carolina Caro LLC. We have Holly Duckworth, who is a Leadership Solutions International, Elena Klaus, who is the co-founder at Event First Steps. The theme for this year is the investment ecosystem and the future tech hubs of Latin America. We look to explore the various opportunities and exciting avenues for the future of tech within the Latin America. And this will be seen within the themes that we have for our panels and the themes that the headline speakers will be speaking on today. Of course, the Latin America forms part of the regional tech ecosystems that are preparing for a digital future here at the Global Startup Ecosystem. And it follows the Africa Future Summit that we held in September this year, the Caribbean Future Summit that was held in October, and now we have the second annual Latin America Future Summit. This is the agenda we have for today. As promised, the action-packed agenda for today. You have time to ask speakers questions and enjoy the panel discussions that have interesting discussions on hand for us. Do stick with us as we go through this agenda. So at this point, it is my pleasure to welcome our first headline speaker in the person of Shirley Purcell, who is the Senior Director of Marketing at HubSpot in the Latin America and Iberia region. kickstart this with a 30-second countdown to welcome our first headline speaker for today. Stay tuned. Welcome, Shelley. As we wait for Shelley to come in, you can send questions for Shelley as we move ahead within the comment section. Shelley does a lot of programming at HubSpot and is keen to share that with us today. We'll transition to her shortly as we get ready for this headline keynote speech.
Okay, so I think we are good to go now. Sorry about that delay. And
no worries. We are really pleased to have you here today. Welcome once again.
Thank you so much. And can you see my slides?
Not yet.
Here we go. There we are. All right.
Great.
Well, thank you again. As mentioned, I'm Shelley Purcell. I'm the Senior Director of Marketing for Latin America and Iberia here at HubSpot. HubSpot is a CRM platform that's helping scaling companies grow better. And I just wanted to start today. We're going to talk a little bit about turning business challenges into opportunities. And so I think if we take a step and think about where we are in the world, we've just started to recover from the effects of a global pandemic. And now we're looking into the future with severe consequences from geopolitical challenges that we're seeing with the invasion of Ukraine, high inflation, continued global demand chain challenges. And this is really causing sort of the next global shock. And unfortunately, Latin America is not immune to any of this. We're in such a global connected society today that we feel everything happening across the world. And so based on all of this and this new global reality that we're facing, we're seeing some current challenges for the outlook in Latin America. So growth projections in the region for the rest of 2022 have actually been adjusted downward by financial institutions, anywhere between 1.8 and 2.4%, according to the World Economic Forum. And so there's a lot of pressure, a lot of things that are happening that are really impacting how we think about business in Latin America. At HubSpot, what we wanted to do is we wanted to dive in a little bit further to really understand what companies are thinking in Latin America. There's a lot happening, but really let's get some deeper insights. And so what we did is we went out there and we listened to them. So we ran a survey across some of our key markets in Latin America, Mexico, Colombia, Chile, and Brazil, where we tried to ask questions that were focused on macroeconomic and global implications that were really affecting these individual companies, what they saw as their challenges and opportunities, if they were thinking about making changes to their business strategy, any changes with their budget based on all of these, global economic uncertainty that we're currently seeing. And so based on that, we found out a lot of really insightful information. We are seeing a lot of, supply and demand fluctuations, talks of looming recessions, capital is not as accessible as it was 2 years ago. And this all is really causing companies to reevaluate how they invest in growth. So a couple interesting findings to call out to you. 46% of companies across Latin America are considering that the current economic conditions are having a negative impact on their business. So that's almost 50% are really feeling this. And in Brazil, 50% of companies think that their main challenge is the increase costs for acquiring prospects and new customers. On the other side, in Latin America, 26% of companies are still executing their budgets as planned from the beginning of 2022. That means over 70% of companies have actually made changes to how they're thinking about their budgets. And then we have 30% of the companies that have actually frozen a lot of their expenses. They're really only looking at their business essential. And so we have a lot of companies with this data that are making changes to really start thinking about all of this economic uncertainty, what's happening, maybe we should slow down, maybe we should think a little bit more, wait to see. And that's causing an increased uncertainty and challenge that companies are feeling. However, I think there is still hope, and it's something that we really want to call out and make sure we're not just painting the negative picture. So of everything that we just talked about, only 4.8% of companies have said that their economic situation has significantly worsened. And 30% of these businesses are saying that companies have improved to some extent. And then we see a lot of insights coming from what companies are really thinking about, where they can invest. And so we see 66 are willing to invest in new tools and platforms that are really going to help with that ability to have better technology. And 29 are willing to invest as long as they're cost effective and they're connecting to their existing tools or systems. So companies are really looking at ways to become more efficient in where they spend their money. And so as we think about that, as devastating as it might seem to have this economic turndown, it definitely doesn't have to be hopeless. And there's always opportunities that come with these challenges. So what I want to talk about is 6 keys to building a sustaining and recession-proof business. The first one is to embrace technology. I think we all saw this a little bit when the pandemic hit, but technology can really help us make more data-driven decisions. It can improve our efficiencies across how we work with different teams and really where we can start to use technology to take out some of that more manual work. It's going to allow us to really scale better as well. And then second, we want to put our customer at the center. When you put your customer at the center of your business decisions, and if you solve for your customer, you're going to start to create a really strong community of customers that not only use your products and services, but actually become promoters of them because they're getting such a great experience through that. And then they help bring in future customers. And at the end, you have a much more sustainable business because you're making better decisions for your business based on putting that customer at the center of it. Third, keep investing or even increase your investment in marketing. I am in marketing, so I think this probably, could be considered a little biased. However, it really is true. When we think about we want to make budget cuts, we need to be more efficient in how we're spending our money. It's easy for companies to think about cutting marketing. However, when you do that, you actually are sort of not hurting, or you're saving money today, but you're hurting yourself for the future. Because a lot of what marketing does is bring in future leads and prospects and customers to your business. And so you've got to really think about being more efficient in how you're investing in marketing, or really be specific about the activities that you're doing. But you don't want to just turn off your investment in marketing because it's going to cause you more challenges and pains in the future with your growth that you're going to have. So keep investing, but be really thoughtful about how you're investing in marketing. And then number 4, have a solid grip on your numbers. So as we know today, data is king. We really want to think about, how we're building everything, how we're making decisions, and being able to use data to have many more insights into what your numbers are. So look at your numbers to make decisions. Think about sales, all of your revenue type numbers, but also things like your customer satisfaction. You can use customer satisfaction surveys NPSs to really understand what's happening in your business and be able to look for opportunities to improve areas where there's perhaps some challenges, or really double down on what's working for your business. And having a grip on your numbers is going to allow you to make those decisions. Number 5, so consider pursuing multiple revenue streams. So while not having to, completely reinvent your business or think about creating, brand new products, but look at what you currently have, and perhaps there's some offshoots of opportunities that you haven't considered in the past. Perhaps there's new customers that you could go after without having to make a big business change, or perhaps there's, some side businesses that you could leverage much more, because you're looking for new opportunities, especially in economic uncertainty. Perhaps certain challenges are going to, cause you to make a little pivot and shift. But this can really help your business grow overall, and not just today, but thinking about the future and sustainability in your growth. And then number 6, forecast carefully. So I think when we talk about forecasting and looking at, where we're expecting our growth, it becomes that much more complicated during an economic uncertain period. And so really get a good grasp on what's happening with your business, how you can project for the future. Try to find that balance between being, realistic, but also stretching that growth, thinking about areas of opportunity. And so you can have a really good focus and idea on what's the future going to be for your business. And so with all of that, these 6 actions you can take today. You don't need to continue to wait longer. These are going to help you. Making these decisions today will definitely help you, ride out whatever comes in 2023 with so much economic uncertainty. And, HubSpot's here to help you do this. So we have a lot of great free resources that you can use. And so you can join our community where there's a lot of other people talking about these challenges. We have our community in English, Portuguese, Spanish, and other languages, as well as our academy where we have free certifications and lessons that are going to be a lot to help you sort of understand new ideas and trends of ways you can optimize your business. And with that, thank you so much. I wish everyone a great rest of the 2022, and I hope you have a lot of success in 2023.
Thank you, Shirley. We are really glad you could join us today. And a key takeaway is to keep on investing, but to be mindful of what's going on, the situation that is going on around you. We are really pleased you could share with us your thought leadership today, and we are really excited for the future ahead of us within HubSpot and within the Latin America region as well. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we are really glad you could join us for the Latin America Future Summit. We appreciate your time you spent with us. Thank you so much. Okay. So we'll take a short break before we transition on to the next panel, which is the Latin America Perspective panel. This is going to look at the Latin America perspectives and the career dialogues within the Latin America region. So we'll take a quick break before we transition to this panel. Welcome, Anselina. To kick things off with this panel, we have our moderator, Anselina Ramos, who would help moderate this panel for us. Welcome, Anselina, and I hand over to you to introduce your panel and your fellow panelists.
Thank you very much. Hi, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank the Global Startup Ecosystem for the invite. And to start this panel, I have with me three amazing women who I kindly ask to introduce themselves and talk briefly about the journey. I mean, we can start with anyone. Paloma, you want to go first?
Sure. Thank you, Angelina. I'm really happy to be here and to share my experience and I'm also really happy to be sharing it with such a dynamic group of career women as well. So my experience has been I started as an industrial engineer. And I worked in the beginning of my career in the microelectronics division of IBM. So I've changed my career. I was motivated because to change into sustainable tourism because as my heritage is from the Dominican Republic. And I could see, these beautiful places that I grew up in visiting. And I saw, how tourism, could be also, was being a force of sort of neglecting the communities and also, having a negative effect on the environment. So I was really motivated, early on, to make that shift. And so I went ahead and I did an MBA. And I also did a postgraduate in tourism management. And that's how I started my shift and became a sustainable tourism development consultant. And, my life took me again to work with Sustainable Travel International, and I joined them in 2015. And so I grew more in this field and also became the CEO back in 2018. And I'm, working in passionate of the work that I do, but I've been lucky, that I've had a chance to do that shift.
Okay, thank you. Carolina, you want to go next?
Sure. So my career also has the pivot theme that Paloma shared. So I started my career as a research scientist in the area of HIV research. And then I was recruited by the pharmaceutical industry, and I worked for Merck and Pfizer, first on the medical side, and then I transitioned into the commercial side and was responsible for brand management. And then I had a career 180, a big shift in my career. It had to do with my boss coming to me and saying, you need to discover a passion or something and get more work-life balance. And so I did that through acting courses, and I discovered mindfulness, and that took me on a career shift where I left my career in the pharmaceutical industry, everything that I had done up until now, all my education, and I went into acting. And I did that full time for several years before landing in the space that I'm in now, which is development, training, speaking, coaching. And so all of the dots have connected, but it's definitely been a pivot after pivot.
Okay, that's interesting. Holly, what about you?
Well, I want one-on-one time with these ladies too. What a great panel we've established here. Thank you for having us. The theme that I can kind of draw from the three of us is yes and yes and yes. And sometimes we said yes to things we didn't know we were saying yes to. I by way of my career, I was meeting planner for 10 years. I'm a certified meeting professional in some of the largest organizations in the world. Then I became a CAE, which is a certified association executive. And then much like Carolina said, I was looking for some sort of work-life balance, work-life integration, and attained an advanced degree as a certified workplace mindfulness facilitator. And now I have two companies. My for-profit company is called Leadership Solutions International, where we offer keynotes, coaching, and training on mindfulness for busy executives. And then I'm also the executive director of the American Mindfulness Association, where we're advancing the ethics and professionalism of mindfulness for places. But all of those themes are, kind of, I did something and attained the highest I could in it, and then, went on to find a new mountain to climb, and a new mountain to climb, and a new mountain to climb. So that might be something that our listeners want to think about as we reboot and reimagine our workplaces into 2023 and beyond.
Wow, okay. And in taking that, what's your perspective on the future of the work and how the pandemic influenced it? Holly, it's for you. You can just keep going.
I'm going first. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
I was just actually talking to a coaching client about this, and we're all hearing the Great Resignation, those types of things. And I think this new way of working is going to be about us curating that work-life integration that we want. Carolina spoke a little bit about finding your passion and giving your passion to the work. And, that doesn't necessarily always mean we're working 60, 80, 100-hour weeks. Now, there may be some weeks that are like that because we've got to push through on a project or we love it. But then there's going to be that work-life integration situation. I'm in America. Our Thanksgiving holiday is next week. And I can't wait to talk to Paloma. I'm actually traveling to Aruba next week because I can do work-life integration, and we'll have some opportunities to travel and work. And I've curated my life in a way that you can do that. So if you're out there thinking about your work-life transition, that it doesn't have to be the way it always was. And yet having those crucial conversations and the willingness to negotiate the salary you want, the work life that you want, the balance that you want, and the team that you want to surround yourself with.
Okay. On the note, I'm going to ask Paloma to go next.
I couldn't agree with you more. It's about work-life balance. I think, with the pandemic, there was, definitely a realization is, people were thinking about, our own, pursuit of happiness, our own well-being. We had a lot of time to think about that. So we are now, looking for jobs that fulfill us. I think that's definitely a theme, a post-pandemic theme. I think all of us can say that we look for jobs that fulfill us already, even pre-pandemic, but I think more people were inspired to do that. So of course, remote work is on the rise. People are able to, work wherever they can, where they feel, that they can, have a more meaningful life, as well as, their work, that fulfills them. I think that's really a theme and a trend, post-pandemic.
Carolina, you want to add something?
Yeah, I'm going to continue to build on that. So I completely agree with the themes shared so far. And the piece that I want to add, something that I talk about in my practice, is that right now there's a lot of generational differences in the workplace, and we were conditioned. I'll speak for myself, conditioned to believe that you had to show up and work a certain way, work really hard. And so there's a challenge right now to some of those, that what I call generational conditioning, to those ideas that we were taught to believe. And particularly the new generations are like, well, we want this and we want that. And some of that is in direct conflict with some of the older generations and what we were taught to believe. And so I think right now there's a huge kind of shift in consciousness, awakening that's happening, and people discovering, the same way that I did 15 years ago. What am I here to do? What's my purpose? How do I want to spend my life? How do I want to design my life? Because we've been sort of given the life, almost inheriting beliefs, and just going along with them. And now people get to self-author. And I think that's what's really happening. And then when you start to think about, I'm going to self-author and design my life, what does that look like? It leads to a lot of questions. And the pandemic for me just exacerbated that. It was already in the air, and it just amplified what's happening right now.
Okay. And since we're talking about remote work, Paloma, I'm going to start with you because of the travel agency. What do you think that is the best advantage and the bigger risk of remote work?
Yeah, that's something that we've been actually working remotely since before the pandemic. So during the pandemic, it was actually seamless for us. It was, business as usual, of course, not business as usual, but at least for us, we were used to it. And there are advantages, of course. You are able to, better manage your work life, balance. For me, I can hire talent anywhere in the world. So I have no barriers as to being, that can also, more diversity and talent, anywhere. So being a global business, I can support in, different time zones, that allows me, to do that. But then, of course, the disadvantage is that, sometimes if you're not really good at managing your work-life balance, I can actually be working more hours because, I can have a meeting, with Asia and first thing in the morning, and then with West Coast US, late at night. So like don't disconnect. So it's that could be a challenge, to really actually manage that. So it's a virtue and also a risk. The whole work-life balance when you're in remote, work. And ultimately is the team building. That's also been, an issue because you're not there. There's always, when you're in an office, you can always have a break with a colleague, have a cup of coffee. That builds trust, that builds, a team feeling, and that can be lost, if not managed well, when you're in remote work.
Okay, and Carolina, taking into account what Paloma just said, in your opinion, what are the top three skills people need to have nowadays to deal with this remote work?
Yeah, so what I'm going to add to that piece is sort of the mindfulness piece that Holly and I both have introduced to this, is that right now, when we're so connected with our devices, because remote work brings the technology piece, it brings all those aspects, and as Paloma was saying, that keep us almost over connected, and our brains need to we weren't designed to operate in that way, and our brains need the pause. And so I would say number one thing, and it changed my life completely, is how do we have that purposeful pause in order to be in a space where we have all this technology and our dependency on all of this. So that would be, for me, my number one. And then really finding ways to connect with one another. As Paloma was saying, we lose that water cooler talk, we lose those connections. So how do we purposefully and very intentionally, again, integrate that into the work? And then I think the third one that comes to mind is our communication, because a lot is lost. It's very different communicating over Zoom and communicating in remote space, because you lose some of the nuances that are available to you when you're in person, and sort of the body language and whatnot. So I think it's really it's almost like developing another antenna, if you will, in our communication to be more adept in the virtual space.
Okay, and Holly, since you mentioned that you would like to connect with Paloma, what do you look for when you're searching for places for remote work?
Ooh, I was ready for the other question. But I'm gonna blend the two, because I think there's something to both, and the word I had was authenticity.
Okay.
That looking for a place to work that matches and mirrors and complements the vision and the mission of your organization and your teams. And sometimes, when we're kind of all whipped up in all the change that's happening in our world right now, I think it's important for individuals and organizations to go back to the why. Why are we here? Whether it's creating pharmaceutical drugs or setting, travel or creating meetings, that if we continue to revisit that, the right and perfect location will show up for that. It's not lost on me that the American Mindfulness Association is headquartered in Denver, Colorado, USA, because there's so many mindfulness universities and related vendors and suppliers that are here. And it also happens to be a major global hub airport. So no matter what the size of your company is, finding a location that matches the why and then kind of builds the pieces into that can be a strategy for greater business success, rather than saying everybody has to be at 101 First Street from 8 o'clock to 5 o'clock. That sometimes there's gifts and conversations that I can have with my network here in Denver because they are close. And I mean, even Paloma mentioned, I was just on a call with a lady down the street. Now I'm talking to Latin America. And when I hang up from this call, I'm going to be talking to India, and an hour after that, back to New York and the West Coast. So a question comes to mind for people as they curate their businesses and their careers. And a lot of my coaching clients have benefited from it, and I'll share it, which is, does it have to be this way? And, Carolina mentioned the lot of age and diversity coming into the company. When we've been conditioned, it has to be X, it has to be Y. Invite that question, does it have to be this way? And see what alternate locations you might work at, people you get to have conversations with, and additional offerings you get to have to curate that life that you really want.
Okay, thank you. And since we are talking about work-life balance, having passion, mindfulness, what are your thoughts? And I want to hear the three of you about quiet quitting. Who's gonna want to start? Feel free.
I'm happy to jump in. I think, as I mentioned, even when I went through my own quitting 15 years ago, a lot of that was already in the air. And I think back to the pandemic just made it front and center. Because if we think about even the social justice issues that came up during the pandemic, none of that was new. George Floyd was one, unfortunately, of many. But the reason why it had the impact that it did is because all of a sudden we were on a pause and we were all watching. And when you're watching versus going about your life and being busy and not having the time to actually digest and take it in, it had, in my perspective, a bigger impact on us. And that's also why during the pandemic, these questions, because now all of a sudden we got a time to spend with our families, do hobbies that we never even knew we wanted to do, and all of these things, so that the questions started to bubble up. It's not that they weren't there, it's that now we had the opportunity to see and to listen to it. And so I think that that's what's led to this piece. And so this mindset shift of like, back to what Holly was saying, does it have to be that way? Now people are asking themselves that question, and it's really forcing organizations to redesign the future of work. And I think we've been in that space for a long time, but now we're sort of at that place where the rubber hits the road. There's no going back anymore, because even the piece of remote work, organizations who are saying, let's go back to 5 days a week in the office, that doesn't work anymore, right? Because now people have seen how productive and efficient we can be when we're not. So I think that's what's happening right now, and that's leading to people saying, recognizing, I've been in a toxic relationship and I'm out, I don't want this anymore. So companies, there's a real burden on them to now shift and create the kinds of spaces that people are going to want to engage in.
So Paloma, Holly,
I agree 100%, with what Carolina said. This is the space that we're in now. And, the consequences, the silver lining, I would say, of, post-pandemic is us, having reflected on our lives and what we want to do with our lives and what we value. And that reflects again in our work, so it's up to the employers right now to really, hone in on what the needs of the employees are, to also provide challenging opportunities. There's a lot of people that are stuck in boring jobs. They don't feel that they're contributing. And that, again, it alienates them. So I think that, businesses, today that are maybe facing this situation, they need to take a hard look and look at the individual, what the individual can bring to the table, and try to challenge them and try to have them, bring what they can and what they're good at. But also, again, providing that, work-life balance opportunity. So it's about opening the minds and using the technology that we were talking about now in an effective way, so that employees can be back at enjoying their work and feeling that they're doing something meaningful.
Holly?
I think Carolina nailed this one. I'm going to just invite another question. I guess I'm good at the questions, maybe less good at the answers sometimes, but I think now is a good time, especially as we move into the end of the year and into the holidays, to also look at the flip side of quiet quitting. And that, as I frame it up, is maybe it's also time to look around at the people who didn't have a pandemic pause. Because there are a lot of people who are going pause. Like, I never paused, nurses, doctors, grocery workers, people in various nonprofits that helped, support people in times of need, and look around at those people and see how you can support them, how you can not always just say thank you, but give them a safe place to laugh, cry, vent, share, because they've been pushing on and pushing on and pushing on. and maybe this holiday can be an opportunity for all of us to work a little differently, maybe give a little extra to give somebody that moment to exhale a little bit. So yeah, there's the quiet quitters, but there's also the quiet overworkers that we need to be mindful and aware of as well.
That's a very interesting point of view. Thank you. So we are talking about creating a new space for the future of work. And how do you see those groups who are like invisible groups, who doesn't feel included, doesn't feel seen by the employees or the coworkers? So how do you see teams like diversity and inclusion on the workplace? I'm gonna start with you now, Paloma.
This is a really challenging one, I think, and I don't think that we're really quite there yet in really finding a solution for diversity and inclusion. There's a lot still to learn there. There's a lot of biases still to overcome, and I think that a remote work does allow, I think, like I was saying before, to have a wider pool, so that we are not only having a very stationed community of pool that we can employ, but I think that there's a long path here to be able to really provide opportunities and to celebrate the diversity that we do have as humanities, and I think there's still a lot to do in the workplace in general. And I just want to give there are some organizations that are working towards this, that are providing policies and tools for organizations, and I would recommend that people look for that are leaders in HR and management look for these type of tools to implement in their businesses. I particularly want to give a shout out to Travel Unity, because that's an organization that's working on diversity and inclusion and equity in the services space, specifically, in the visitor-facing organizations.
Okay. Holly, do you think that companies are really interested in making the effort, or just they are like doing the stuff so they be nice in the picture?
Well, first of all, Paloma, thank you for taking that one on DE&I, because I like what you said there about there being a long road. I think so often in our instant Amazon world, where we just think we can get a package delivered, that's really great insight there. That this is a journey and not a destination. And to your question, I think some will, some won't. Somebody's waiting, and the reality is, while we all represent different countries and different geographies and different companies, there are companies that really do believe in this. I think about the certified B corporations, I think about nonprofit models, and there are some organizations that will be first on the train building the path, and then there'll be some in the middle going, okay, we get it, and then there'll be some late adopters, and that's part of any change initiative within an organization, within a region, and then certainly something as big and global and in some cases unconscious as this. We're going to have some grace around. Everybody's going to navigate this in their own time and way, but the sheer fact that it is at the forefront of conversations allows some of those fast adopters to move even quicker.
Okay. And Carolina, do you think that the companies have like the knowledge and the tools to really make their workplace inclusive and diverse?
Yeah, so I think the first part to having the tools is having the acknowledgement and really the desire to engage in these conversations. So I work in this space and work with organizations over year-long engagements in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space. And the first thing that I always say is we need to have the buy-in. And that might seem like something very simple, but to your point in your question before, is a lot of individuals feel like they need to do this, right? So there's that checking the box mentality that I call it, but it's It's how much do we really know why we're doing this? And are we really engaged in a way that everyone else in the organization acknowledges and sees it from our senior leadership? That is the first and foremost. And if we don't have that, what I have seen is things fall through, right? So we don't get the traction that we really need to make the changes sustainable. Excuse me. And so then in terms of the tools, I mean, there's a lot of us in this space right now working to move the needle. And the way that things need to be approached is from what I think is a two-pronged approach. So there's everything that's related to policies and the procedures within an organization. That's one piece. And that certainly can have a ripple effect on the systemic changes. But then there's the people piece, which is making sure that we recognize that we have training on our biases and we can start doing the work to undo that. And that is so deeply ingrained that takes time. It's like culture change within an organization. It's going to be a journey, as I heard before. So I think in terms of the tools, almost more important than having those tools is how you engage with them. And it really needs to be, you need to be all in to have the traction that we need, because this is such a huge shift for individuals. When I was doing this work pre-George Floyd, people didn't even want to hear about it most of the time. And so now I think what's happened is the shift is, okay, we're open to it and we're having the conversations, which is amazing and such a huge progress. But to Paloma's point, there's so much more work to do. And what I'm just grateful for is the increased receptivity. Right now, as Holly was saying, it's at the forefront, and we're starting to have the conversations. We're starting to get in there and do the work. And as people engage with it, then they start seeing, wow, this takes time, and it takes work, and it takes effort, and I need to be in it. And I think those realizations also help in the engagement piece.
Okay, thank you very much. We don't have met many time. So do you guys want to share anything before we end up our conversation? Any tips, any advice?
I mean, maybe just, in general, from my perspective, to try to, what I try to do is just to keep the conversation open with employees, to try to make sure that, that you are providing, a healthy environment, to check in on your employees. Are they working on the right activities that are really going to, help them excel in their work? Are they just checking in on your employees will really help. I think in really providing that space for your employees to thrive, and for them to be able to have that work-life balance that we're all looking for, and of course to make sure that they are fulfilled in their job. So I think that's something that sometimes we forget in leadership, to really check in and to listen to our employees.
And I think one thing I want to add in this transition time that we're in, and I live in California, which is like, there's almost a pressure of happy, happy, happy. I think we need to normalize stress and normalize anxiety. And what I mean by that is that it's present. And if people have the opportunity to actually sit with all of that versus pushing it away and making it try to go away and replacing it with happy, happy, then we can have more authentic conversations about what's really happening to us and everything that we've just gone through in the past couple of years. And as it relates to reframing this new, the future of work, if you will, that we're going to make mistakes. We're not going to have all the answers right away. And so it's accepting this new way of thinking that it's not going to be perfect. It's going to be messy. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to fall. We're going to be anxious. We're going to be stressed. And all of those things are normal. And it's not, and believe me, I'm a big proponent of positive thinking and being happy, but it doesn't replace also all these other human emotions that we have. And how do we make room for all of it and stop pushing it away because we don't want to see it? In seeing it, just like in diversity, equity, and inclusion, when we see our biases, that's how we can overcome them. If we don't have the courage almost to look at those dark parts of ourselves and of humanity and society, then we're not going to get to the other side.
Ollie?
Well, how much time do we have left in this session? I think we could go on. we have 2 whole minutes. Okay.
Yeah.
I think that maybe the gift that we can give as kind of a conversation is actually a minute to breathe. Mm-hmm. And knowing that Caroline is into mindfulness and sustainable travel, I think maybe we can, on the panel, one of the best things that we can demonstrate is let's just all take a minute and exhale, give yourself the grace to go, it's okay to breathe in. And take a mindful breath out. And wherever you're listening to this recording or this live session from, just take another breath in and out. Take the awareness to feel your feet on the ground. Take a breath in and out. Feel yourself supported by the chair. And as you just take these breaths in, let us just remember in community that we have more in common than we think we do. And we all want to do great work. We all want to be our highest and best self. When we return to that breath, giving ourselves permission to release the stress and be fully present in the moment, we get to curate better relationships with ourselves, with our coworkers, with our companies, and create a better world around the world. So that's my thought as we come together in this conversation. Don't forget, sometimes it's okay to just breathe into the challenges ahead of us.
Wow, that's such a beautiful way to end this panel. Thank you very much, all of you. And thank you to GSE.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Of course. Thank you very much. These some great speakers. We are really happy you could share this with us. And thank you very much, Anselina, for kicking this off. So coming up next is the entrepreneurship panel and investment. So we'll kick that off right after the 30 minutes countdown. Turn your laptop, let me see.
Okay. Hello, Leticia.
Yes. Okay. Thank you very much, everyone. So thank you, Stan, for hopping on that early. So up next is the investment ecosystem of the future, the opportunity for entrepreneurs and pioneers. And I'll leave it up to you to welcome your fellow panelists for the session.
Thank you so much, Leticia. Okay. My name is Daniel Tete here at GSC, and I'll be moderating this panel. Pleased to have you on, Viviana and John, and I'll leave you to introduce yourselves. For the first part of it, I'd like you to introduce yourself. I want us to play a quick exercise where you introduce yourselves by telling us, tell us what you do and how your journey has gotten you to where you are. So I'll start with you, Viviana.
Hi, good morning. It's lovely to be here. I am the former head of sustainability for Unilever North America. I was in the consumer and product goods for about 15 years. And I left the company about a year and a half ago. So this is a moment of transition in where I'm currently doing a lot of consultancies around corporate strategy and environmental, social, and governance. But I am doing a lot of research in the intersection of geopolitics and the role of corporations and resilience, and trying to absorb a little bit everything that is happening in the world and figure out where we can move the needle. That's briefly about me. Passing the ball to John.
Yeah.
John, we can't hear you. Sorry, I don't.
We can hear you, John. Okay, so I think you may be having mic issues. So John, kindly rejoin. We'll continue the conversation. Once you join in, would loop you into where we get to. I'll continue with Viviana, so we can have a brief fireside chat as we go on. So, the follow-up question to your introduction: how does your role allow you to interact with and impact diverse communities?
Well, in my career in CPG, I had the opportunity to be involved in different social and environmental initiatives. But coming from the private sector, big emphasis was around empowering communities. And in order to do so, we first need to understand where the systemic challenges and potential systemic solutions are, and how to really understand in a much deeper way consumers, citizens, and the communities that we reach. So the type of work that a consumer product goods can do, reaching billions of consumers and communities around the world, is enormous. So there are many ways of going about that. In my career, I had the privilege to be able to travel around the world, most of the regions, very different communities, and helping to address some of those social and environmental challenges in a specific communities has been a way for me to interact and to bring that purpose to life.
Okay, that's great, and that's really interesting to hear because there are a lot of opportunities available in certain communities that are open to explore, and we need more people to interact with those communities and also create those impacts within those communities. That will lead me to my next question, to talk about certain initiatives that you personally have been involved in, or certain programs or projects maybe you have been involved in with your institution. Is there anything like that focuses on probably female professionals or entrepreneurs?
Yes, very much. So different programs, but one in particular that comes to mind, and it was very close for me personally, was a social distribution program that was mainly focused for women in rural areas, from low income consumer communities that had very limited access to basic products of health and hygiene and foods, especially in developing countries. So having the opportunity to work with these communities and understand really what impact is. One thing is what we think people need, another thing is what is happening in reality, and how to build economies backwards. And not only with a sense of dignity of what really is required for a single mom of three in a household with less than $100 a month in various precarious situations, and how to uplift these communities in a more meaningful way. It's not just by giving fishes, is by teaching people how to fish. So a lot of partnerships and strategic alliances, especially with small communities, NGOs, local entrepreneurs, has been very important in order to bring this to life. So it is absolutely critical to think that any initiative, if it's meaningful impact and sustainable growth, is something you cannot do alone. And the way of engaging the communities and the people that any company with products and services reach is by working with them.
Okay, that's really great, and that's really interesting. You mentioned about partnership, because I believe partnership is the way to go when you want to impact some of these communities. We can do this through partnership and various levels of partnership. You mentioned local partners, global partners. We need everyone has to be involved in order to push certain initiatives going. So it's really, if you want to up communities, we meant to push that forward with partnerships, and really happy brought that. See,
John,
John
hi,
is in.
welcome.
John,
Can you hear us and see us?
John, you are muted.
No, I'm good. I think the microphone works now. I don't know what happened.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah.
Great.
Tech issues today, huh?
Yeah. All right. So I'll leave you to introduce yourself and tell us what you do and how your journey has led you to where you are now.
I'm the executive director of the International Ecotourism Society, and I had a very interesting journey. I started off in finance many years ago. It was an exciting time, but when you consider the way that American finance works, it's very one-sided, and it ends up benefiting a certain group of people. And I didn't find that something that I thought I wanted to end my life and say, look back and say, I made a few people very rich. In fact, that seemed to me to be one of the worst ways to end one's life. So I thought, what do I really want to do? And that's led me to spending about half my day putting out fires, as I think any nonprofit executive would sympathize with, and the other half working with governments and regions around the world, operators and friends from everywhere to implement sustainable natural tourism and create revenue for communities and respect for traditions and history, and conserve both plants and animals, and try to make our ecosystems more sustainable so that they continue to exist, and change some things that maybe need to be changing in a slow and and careful way, but make sure that we're building in stone, for the next generation.
That's really great to hear. I'll follow up with a second question that I asked Vina as well. I want to know if there are any initiatives or programs specific to the International Ecotourism Society that are impacting, that concentrating on women and entrepreneurs as well. If you can shed more light on any of such initiatives.
Absolutely. So you may know, if you pay attention to the world of ecotourism, that about, I guess, 50% of the world uses our definition. It's really, I guess, what we're most known for. There's no single owner of the ecotourism space at all. It's a big place now, and it's grown rapidly, and all of us are kind of small in comparison to this giant market. So there's no one person that controls, even though some people say they do. There isn't one person who controls the market, but a lot of people use our definition, so we find it important. And what we've done is we've threaded all through that there's some very important aspects, not just gender equality, but growing the role of women in tourism, and not just the bottom parts of it, but the policy roles and representation throughout the entire chain. And actually, just like so many things, I know everyone who's worked on something for a long time knows what this is like. You start off at the bottom of the mountain and you're watching your feet, and you're walking in some rocks and mud and you get tired. And then, after a little while, you look up and you say, wow, this is amazingly beautiful. I can't believe I got here. So we're all still in that stage where we're walking in the mud, but we are making a difference. And if you look around, you can see a lot of my colleagues, and these are wonderful, wonderful, intelligent, powerful, capable people who have changed everything for the better in our industry and brought about so much change. I would say that maybe this is just anecdotal, but I mostly deal with women now, in terms of executive roles. And when I have something that I need to get done, that I say, I'll never be able to do this myself, which I say all the time. I'm grateful for the fact that this has happened, because many people who are trying to advocate for change will tell you that when you need to make change. I know that sounds silly, but the truth is, if you don't allow for people to come into these roles that are willing to advocate, then you're going to have a closed door when you go and you try to advocate for change. So it's been central to our definition, to our theme, to our goals, and to our policy decisions, and any guidance that we issue for 10 years now. And whether or not, eventually I'll be able to look around and say, we've done something, I don't know, but I know that I'm going to keep on doing everything that we can do, that I can do, and we can do to make this possible.
Okay, that's really great and interesting to hear, and it leads to this, the next question, which is quite similar but a bit different. I just want to us to look at the solutions. What solutions do we see in some of these programs and initiatives? Because we have these initiatives and programs that are geared towards making a difference in diversity and inclusion, particularly for female career professionals. So I want to see some of the solutions that are being brought out to the problems that are facing the push for this inclusion for female career professionals. I'll start with you, Viviana, this time.
So I think like everything is identifying really what are the main blocks and challenges that are preventing for women to, either enter more in the workforce, remain, or have, more robust career opportunities. And I think big part of it is a capability investment, and it depends really where the location and the situation is. In one country you could have 5 different reasons why women have limitations to access the workforce, or even when they're there, difficult to stay. And I'm referring, for example, to a critical period when a woman decides to, become a mother, and having to juggle that duality is not just about enabling, for example, basic things like maternity leave or paternity leave. And you'll be surprised that in even countries like the US, there is not such policy at the federal level that allows to have paternity leave. And obviously the circumstances in other countries are different. So first is really understand where investments and over focus needs to be to help these barriers and their systemic challenges that are preventing women to remain in the workforce. Even if you have a more transparent way to measure and to have baselines. And I think a big starting point is where are we, and where would we like to go, and what are those things that we need to tackle, but also the systems around that need to facilitate this process. Another thing that really shocks me now, I'm a mother of 2, and just seeing in this country, in the US alone, the costs of daycare, they're out of reach for many people. So a lot of the solutions are not really democratized across the populations. Only a few have the opportunity to do this. So a woman, most women at some point, they have to choose between, the being caregivers and supporting their young families, and having a big long pause in their careers if they don't have other support systems around them. So those are realities, and I think we can all be very shocked by the numbers if we extrapolate them at a world level, depending by regions. So I think we need to be very comfortable increasingly with all of these situations. Yes, we need to celebrate the progress that we are making, and there is a much open dialogue and activism on this at different levels, and that is very encouraging. And more we see women in critical roles that are being an amplifier of all of those voices. But it is also my concern that we still have growing numbers in a different direction of inequality in an economy that is not really helping us to uplift everything. And there's no way business can thrive if communities cannot thrive, and if minorities and populations that are being marginalized for different reasons don't thrive with us. So it's not, I think in this decade, one of the critical aspects, of course, aside of the fragility that we have from an environmental perspective, is inequality, on top of the rest of socioeconomic and geopolitical circumstances that we're all going through. And this inequality is going to get, unfortunately, bigger and bigger if some of the systemic things are not being addressed. So good news, conversations are out there and big programs, but I think we still have a long way to go.
All right. Thank you. John, same question to you. The solutions to these initiatives, what's going on for inclusion and female career professionals?
Well, first I want to congratulate Viviana on laying it out so beautifully. I don't have anything to add on to that. She really gave us exactly what the case is, and I'll just add my imprimatur to that without equality and without representation, you will inevitably fail. So all of these super smart people that think that they can do things, from the 1850s, this is not you're wrong. I'll just say that flat out. But I think what I'd like to do is take it out of the United States for a moment and go to the rest of the world. And see what we can do in the rest of the world. And I think there's 3 basic steps that anyone can do. Any organization, any company, any government can do. The first is education. Are you engaging in education everywhere? Are you making education available? Are you making education available to everyone? That's number 1. If you don't do that, education and capacity building, then you are starting inequality from the cradle. And that is something that will pay you back in a very negative way for a very long time. So I think education is the first one. Second, are you investing? Are you investing? Are you starving? Because, women-owned businesses are a lot of the small businesses, and they are starved for capital, right? You tell me how someone in Tanzania is supposed to go and access capital from the global financial system. I'll tell you, it doesn't happen very often, does it? So how are we? We're using investment rules that were created during the Victorian era in England to create this ridiculous, haphazard, non-representational solution for the world. So we have to increase investment in an equitable way everywhere, not just in Europe, not just in North America, but everywhere. That's step 2. And then step 3 is meeting women where they are. So as I guess you can, maybe a theme of what I'm saying is that all this has to continue to evolve. An organism has to evolve to continue to live and to continue to grow and to continue to thrive. So our culture must evolve. And that means that women in the workplace are all around the world in different scenarios. It is not their job to meet an ancient standard. It is our job to meet them where they are. Viviana referred to maternity leave. If you take away someone's career because they choose to have a child, then you're hurting yourself and you're hurting the world more than you're hurting this person, right? You're disappointing her. You're gonna reinforce a terrible paradigm, but you're hurting yourself to do that. So I think it's actually, we need to twist that a little bit and say it's incumbent upon the governments and the companies and the policymakers to decide ways that they can actually go out and meet people where they are, so that, again, from this agricultural 1850s mindset that we sort of are still laboring under, we need to evolve now that we have technology and electricity and light bulbs and all those things. We need to go out and actually meet people where they are. And that means making work available to people who are choosing to have children and making office hours and things like that, insofar as one can, available to everyone. And if we do this, if we do education, investment, and we meet people where they are, we'll find out that a lot of these problems are much easier to solve than they are right now.
John, I'm very grateful that people like you really understand also where the male role is in all of this, because this is not just a women conversation or about the female. This is about all of us and the role in society that we play and how we address toxic masculinity and in different areas. So I am very hopeful and pleased to see that more and more there's so many on the conversation and taking action. I mean, talking about worldwide women challenges. I mean, look what is happening in Middle East, and thank God people are stepping up, right? And we're going to see more and more of this. And just going back a little bit to North America, because it feels a bit surreal that people here in Washington, D.C. are marching for the same things that we're marching in 1950 and 1960. So sometimes it's a bit scary when you wake up and think, oh my goodness, am I going to go out in the streets just like my grandma did, so my girls would have, some basic human rights?
That's right.
So I think we need to juggle between some genuine progress we are making, and also we need to more than ever be very active and vocal in stepping up in things that should not go in the wrong direction. Even if it goes low, we should at least go to the right direction, not to the opposite. So, I think thanks to connectivity and a a good way of all of us as citizens of the world trying to be more active. Things are happening faster because, a few decades ago, it would have not been so easy to move things at scale at the pace that we are doing it now. But it can be overwhelming because things are going in many different directions. So I couldn't agree more with John that education is an absolute critical priority in all of this. And obviously access to capital, how to enable those resources for all of these issues, because they vary depending on where you are and the circumstances. And having that understanding and unbiased on the situation is the first massive step that I think we're making in different areas, not just in private sector and public sector, but as a society. And we are finally getting more outrage for things that before we would just see on TV. They were just, people sort of got used to it. And now there is that sort of outrage. And people are having opinions, and people are voting with their feet and their wallet and everything. So that gives a little bit of hope, at least me as a woman and the mother of two other little women. So I think about that, of course, day in, day out. So that's my food for thought on that.
Absolutely. And I agree with both of you. You mentioned certain key factors that we've seen happening across. I think you both mentioned about capability investment and the need to understand where to direct the efforts that we are putting in. And understanding the situation is key to finding solutions to where we are and looking at it as a global problem, not just within our communities, but something that is global to affecting all women across the world, particularly those in marginalized societies. So it's really interesting, and it's something that we are keen to see how it ends, or how far it can go, which leads to the next question. It's two questions put in one, but I just want to talk about, we face certain resistance in some of these areas that we want to move into certain aspects of promoting diversity and inclusion. There are certain resistance from certain sectors that we have. And then also the second part of the question is, with all this resistance that we have and the various challenges that we face, how do we make sure there's a sustained effort at pushing for inclusion and diversity? I think, John, you can start with this as well.
Thank you. Well, the second part of that question, I think I'm actually fairly qualified to answer. We've been very hopeful on this call, but there are some things that are not going well, and that is the state of the global financial system responding to these types of initiatives. They are responding by, there's an expression that came up in America in the financial world during the crash of 2008. I remember it very distinctly because I was sitting on a trading desk, and a person said, let's put some lipstick on this pig, right? That was an expression. It means let's pretty up something that's, not pretty. And unfortunately, a lot of the, green bonds and things like that, which is $1 trillion market now, there's not a lot of accountability for how these funds, it's really funny, Viviana, you mentioned that you're, between, I don't know what that exactly means, but, for someone like you, and pardon me, everyone who's watching this, I'm just going to have a personal conversation. This would be a great field for we need your type of a person in this field is reporting on what these initiatives are doing. So there's billions and billions and billions of dollars going to certain initiatives, and our friends at the rainforest of the Netherlands, they put out a report that 1.5% of these funds are going to the people that they and we talk about investment in women. Some of it is designed to be invested. So you're thinking you're investing, oh well, there's 10 billion invested in women. Well, how are they not happy about that? But if 1.5% of that is actually getting to people on the ground, then none of this is none of these things that we say, education, investment, is going to make it anywhere. So the very first thing is, you said, what could we do? to continue to grow sustainability, to help sustainability, and to help these initiatives. We can look at them and we can insist that they are transparent, and we can insist that the stated goals of these folks who are packaging these billions of dollars and making quite a good amount doing it, that it goes actually to a place where we need to see it, and it actually makes it through the pachinko machine to get down to the layer that we need it to, so that people can actually access that capital and make some of this change. I think there is a strong desire for people to see these initiatives through. We see that. We see people voting in this direction, asking for this, saying that they want it. But I don't think that they're following that all the way through the people who say, you know what, fine, we'll take care of it. Give us your money. We'll package it up. We'll give it to those folks. I assure you that we're actually making sure that happens. So I think that's a little bit of the downside of some of this. And so I think that in this especially matters for equity and inclusion, because who's doing that is the same old, right? And we need to make sure that there are more people who are representational from these indigenous communities, from these women's small business organizations, watching those things happen and monitoring that capital so that it gets where it's supposed to go. That would be one of my anyway preliminary suggestions.
So I think you're totally spot on, John, in how we're going to manage and quantify in a reporting, so the markets can regulate this as well. That is a $1 million question. When are we going to have a carbon accounting so we can compare company A and B, not just on diversity, but on other environmental and governance issues? And the ESG work stream is thankfully progressing, and I think thanks to technology and now much more visibility and willingness from corporations to disclose, declare, and put things out there. And this is actually the moment where all of this is happening. In some places more rapid than others because of regulation, or because simply staggering compass of moral leadership from some regions and some companies and others. But I think at some point everyone is going to have to catch up, because either will be a mandate or simply the numbers are going to make sense. Well, we're going to see more and more productivity and impact driven organizations led mostly by minorities or by women, or the resilience, or all of this. Like if you just take some of those examples on where things are flourishing, take a look at what is happening on supplier diversity programs around the world. Now you have industry groups dedicated and committed to this, that are quantifying not just the absolute numbers that are being reported from a social perspective, but the millions and billions of dollars allocated to invest in these minority groups. And certifications are being put in place. So the industry itself is regulating. Of course, it's going to take time. But, all in all, if we think from a macroeconomic perspective, and we don't have to go too far, let's go to COP27. The whole discussion is about who's going to pay for what, right? And especially in marginalized communities or in countries where, look, I learned yesterday that a country like Barbados spends 55% of its GDP on external debt and only 5% to any sort of education, health, and environmental response. That already tells you how difficult it is for many countries that simply do not have the capacity at scale to invest in their communities as they should to address some of these issues. So we're going to have a lot of, I think, in the years to come, conversations around how does the financial system and systems are going to help address the solutions, and not just this infinite growth model that some insane economists in the last century thought was somehow sustainable, when we only have one Earth and when human capital, of course, is limited, and we're reaching a little bit the boundaries of all, right? So I think, unfortunately, maybe some things, this is where I'm going to be a little bit fatalistic on a Friday, but maybe, and it looks like some things need to be even in more distress for people to react. Where I think that the good news is that there is much more awareness, visibility, reporting, and technology in place that we're going to start seeing flowing more rapidly, and is going to allow a much bigger scale to address, I think, these kind of issues.
let's hope.
That's great.
We better.
Very cool. Really thankful to both of you. It's very obvious both of you are involved, and you are involved in this fight, the push for sustainability, for the push for inclusion, and hopefully these sustained efforts would get us to where we want to be. As little progress we are seeing, we still see a lot of progress going on. As little as maybe it's taking a huge step towards where we want to see, or the ideal future we want to see for diverse people, indigenous people, marginalized people, and we are hopeful that this will lead us to a very great future, because we see that the landscape is evolving as we go on, and year in, year on, these efforts are put into fruit or are giving us encouragement from what is happening. To round up this panel, I'd like to ask if you have any last words. It could be a piece of advice. You could share any initiatives you have coming up as well, or advice or any kind of encouragement you have for entrepreneurs who are coming, diverse entrepreneurs, or any kind of piece of advice, or a key takeaway from this panel.
Like, I think when we started, I was a bit distracted when I was worried about John's microphone and everything. So I don't think I answered my question about the journey. But in a nutshell, and as a wrap up, I think that, and very similar to John's journey, it's when you start identifying your purpose, whether if it's in life, whether circumstances that you are, that you start questioning if what you're doing has an impact or not. And I believe that everywhere, every human can have an impact, no matter how challenging the situation is in an organization, company, in your life. And I think it's about finding the sweet spot in that place or in that community, or making the changes necessary to reinvent things, because a lot of the stuff that brought us here is not going to take us there. So we need to feel a bit uncomfortable and bold and think a bit different. I think in our individual lives, a lot of people are shifting. We maybe needed a pandemic and other crazy stuff to make us realize that we maybe don't need 20 Amazon boxes and 20 shoes and 20 sweaters. If you see, consumers at different levels are actually shifting priorities and needs. We're realizing that we are a hyper-connected community and ecosystem, and that from businesses to governments, and we're seeing it. Look at the elections. People are shifting into, wait, hold on, we might need different things. So don't assume that an individual does not have power. I think there's an African that says, don't put a mosquito in one room and you see how much power one mosquito can have, right? One night. So it's the same as individually. I don't think there's companies with purpose. There's people with purpose. So it is about people. It is about that, genuine thought of what is the purpose of what we are doing and how we're doing it. And all businesses, all organizations need to rethink this. And the more uncomfortable we are with this topic, I think the more progress we will make.
Thank you. John, last words.
If you're working in sustainable tourism or ecotourism in Latin America, you need to reach out, ecotourism.org. Just come and find me.
All right. Thank you so much, Viviana and John. It's been great having you on this panel. We'll continue to follow your journey and continue to see where your journey takes you. We're really excited for the future ahead within the sustainability space. And this has been the investment ecosystem of the future panel, where we'll be looking at the opportunities for entrepreneurs and partners. Thank you so much, Viviana and John. Thank you for joining us for the Latin America Future Summit.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Daniel, for moderating that. Coming up next is the headline speaker. So coming up next, we have Vinicio Pereira, who is a senior official from the International Labour Organization. So he was the lead advisor on employment and social protection issues to the UN negotiations on Agenda 2030, mainly championing goals and targets in the area of decent work. So without much ado, we'll dive straight into the 30 minutes countdown and get ready for Vinicio Pereira. Agreeing to stream. He's muted. Hello.
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me. Yes, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Take it away,
Yes.
please.
So thank you so much for inviting me. I always learn a lot participating in such summits about the future. And today I would like to propose 3 very short points for reflection at the end of this important meeting. The first one is about introducing myself and share with you some things that I'm passionate about. And to set the stage for this first point, I would like to tell a story. I would like to invite you to New York City to a summit that I participated in, the Future of Work, organized by the Stanford Business School in 2019. I was in a panel with a few CEOs, and the guy who introduced himself just before me said he was a job exterminator. He basically said, my job is to destroy jobs. So my company provided advisory services to other companies on how to automate processes, how to outsource tasks to cheaper places so they can reduce personal expenditures and have more capital to invest. So have more capital to invest. Basically, that's what he said. And he also added something like, look, anything that is a routine task can be automated. And if there is not a solution available yet, we'll find out. We'll challenge our network of startups, come up with something. This sounded like apocalyptic to me, but I wasn't too shy to say, look, my job is to save jobs and to create jobs, and not in types of jobs, but decent jobs with contracts with access to labor rights, with social protection. And this is not a matter of personal expenditure, but also a matter of strengthening demand to keep the economy moving. And because if everybody is unemployed, who's going to buy the products? And a matter of political instability, polarization, social unrest, political turmoils are strongly correlated with unemployment rates. And finally, it's also a matter of dignity. The value of work, of having a job, goes well beyond the salary. It gives a sense of belonging to a society. It gives satisfaction. So the audience was very excited. There'll be blood. But in the end, he was very kind of me by saying that someone has to think about those issues and to do a kind of damage control. But he'll keep going on his eradication business. So that's my job. My job is to promote decent work and support government workers and employers in creating decent work for all. I spent most of my time during the pandemic doing that. I'm still the regional director for Latin America. Moving on. But basically, I was in the front line of designing policies, how to design, for example, social benefits, how to recompensate, companies, in particular SMEs, for their losses, how to regulate telework, how all these things that came up from and were boosted from the pandemics, we were kind of behind in supporting the governments. And I would like to insist on the word decent, because in the same panel, there was another guy saying that all regulations, labor regulations, labor rights, these are from the past. These are things from the 20th century and don't fit into the digital revolution. And my response to that was, no matter what you do, if you are an app developer, a construction worker, at some point, in your life, you need some predictability. You need to know what time you're leaving, or what time that you arrive at home. You need to know whether you can commit to get a loan to buy a house, to put your kids at school. If there is an income replacement, kids will become sick. If you lose your job, if there is an employment, and finally, if you have a decent retirement benefit when time comes. So that's a decent job. That's what I'm here for. That's what I have been doing the last 15 years or so. One point that's related to this first point, and that I'd like to comment, is that this week we've seen a lot of big tech companies announcing major job cuts. Now, if you have followed the news this week in the US in particular, 10, 20, 50%, Twitter, all the big techs like announcing big major cuts. Some adjusting the recession that is coming up, others just because they were kind of bloated during the pandemics and now they're adjusting to the new times. And others, they're just following the job stimulated advice. Now, they are tech companies, of course, so they are doing automation in their processes. Of course, for me, any job loss is a matter of concern. But what really struck me was to read some Wall Street analysts saying that there's no reason to worry because this sector has no importance in the overall employment. And he said, employment in tech industry is only 2% of the US employment. So that's for me was a shock. I knew, it was little, but Twitter has 4,500 employees. Netflix has 11,300 employees. And these are companies shaping the world, shaping the way you behave. These are companies change elections, and that's a matter of concern because this is perhaps the most dynamic sector, the most, important sector in terms of generation of revenue, of wealth, and are the ones that are generating the least employment. So this is something I'd like you to reflect about. Sorry. And it comes with a challenge now, since you start talking about challenge. And the challenge is, how can we change this paradigm? How can we put people at the center? Someone said that before. How can we put employment at the center and as part of the engine of the tech industry? So that's my first point. My second point, which is more related to the panel, is about the labor prospects in our region. Of course, everybody knows we were a disaster. You were the worst hit region, both in terms of health, in terms of deaths per capita, and in economic terms. But Lido has said on about what this happened. And we in the ILO have our thoughts, have written some papers. And for me, my assessment is that our very bad records are related to structural comorbidities, which are high informality, low social protection, and high inequality. Okay, so everybody saw how difficult it is to put forward martial laws, lockdowns in high informality countries. And I was in Peru. Peru is 80% informality. You basically said, okay, stay at home. How I'm going to eat? I don't have any fridge to store food. If I stay home, I'm staying with 3 families. So it's not appropriate. The truth is, and I have to. I'm starting to get some criticism from our other colleagues when they used to say strict lockdowns in countries with high informality doesn't work. Particularly in countries, and that was perhaps, of course, we need some more time now to reflect about the pandemic, the policy options. But for me, the most, the least intelligent, let's say, policy option was to combine the lockdown with closures in schools for some cases more than 2 years in countries without internet, without broadband, without the possibility of connecting. So we have changed the structure of division of work and family, disfavorable towards women. Women were stuck, they couldn't go out, children at school, and something that was happening in Latin America, now we're kind of a decade behind, was the combat to child labor. If the kids are there anyway at the farm, why don't you send them to the harvest of coffee? Because as one of the employers said to me, the harvest doesn't wait for the pandemic to pass or for the lockdown to pass. Either you go or not, or you lose. So they don't hesitate to put the kids to work. And then everything we're doing on combating child labor, gone. And then you have to start everything again, because once you lose, a kid at school, it's difficult to bring them back because they have an income, etc. Anyway, we did a lot of mistakes, and a lot has to do with this, what are called social comorbidities, low social protection. My God, how can you face a pandemic without having a health system? Some countries said, okay, I'm going to pay a benefit, a social benefit for those who are unemployed. But they didn't even know because they didn't have a database to identify who were poor, who could be entitled. And then they had these long queues, formed to pay a benefit that was designed to have people separated. This kind of Latin America, kind of surrealism. So that's what happened. And when I'm sorry to say that, because when I heard people saying, okay, in the pandemic, we had time to think about ourselves, about the well-being, mindfulness, life purpose. Okay, that's fine. In the region, most people are concerned about surviving. I'm sorry to say that. And I say that because I have participated in many, many meetings. And when I come up, in the UN, we had this mantra, building back. If you need to build back, let's build sustainable system. And then I got this Colombian young guy who said, look, I was just struck by a train and you want me to run a marathon. It's not possible. I lost my father, I lost my mother, I lost my job. So that's the reality we are looking at. Of course, a lot of people were able to continue working. And then there is another issue that I'll talk about. But then we need to, of course, to face the real world, which was surviving, surviving. Well, 2022 now, we have seen significant recovery in employment. So that's good news. But the prospects are still complex and uncertain. And that's also is a threat of increasing unemployment, increasing formality, increasing the number of working people. And this has to do, of course, with the prospects of the economy, as someone said at the beginning, inflation, global inflation, increase interest rates. Then again, we are on a track because we borrowed a lot of money. So we haven't seen some advances. In 10 of the 14 countries where data is available, employment rate in the first quarter of 2022 had not yet recovered to 2019, but it's going. But the type of employment that's been generated is poor quality. It's informal. Okay, so we are coming back. We're not building back better. We're building back worse, and that's important to have in mind because it's not only poor employment. It's also employment with pays. Very badly. It's employment without contract and without stability. And women are still the worst, affected. Okay, but one thing that I'd like to highlight, just to finalize the second point, is that, of course, unemployment, informality are also closely related. Inflation, driven in particular by food crisis, energy crisis, will have impact in salaries. So what you make in the end of the month will be less and less compared to previous periods. So it's increasing what they call the working poor phenomenon. And I think this point is fundamental. It's proven that precarious labor market and inequalities, both together, drive social unrest and political instability, threatening democracy, and that's how you end up with authoritarian perpetual regimes. And then when you come to the struggle, my friend, it's more difficult to revert. My last point is about two major changes, amazing changes, and my colleagues also spoke about that. That the pandemics boosted, that came to stay in the way we organize our work and the way we organize our lives. I'll be very brief. And these are the expansion of the platforms and the use of teleworking, okay? The digital platforms they're working. On digital platforms, let me again tell you a story, invite you now to a conversation, not a phone conversation, a closed doors conversation. I shouldn't be disclosing it, but it was very, of course, I don't talk about who are the CEOs, but they were CEOs of big delivery platforms in the region that we met
in Lima. And I was intrigued because first, the way the platforms responded to the crisis. In fact, the day after the lockdown was decreed in Peru, there was an army of motorboys going up and down. How, from where did they, all these people came from, and how they were recruited, and how, it's not easy, okay, let's start 1 week. No. Day after, we had a lot of people working. And 60%, according to our research, were Venezuelan migrants, right? And then I said, okay, what is the entry criteria that you use in your company? And the guy said, no, we don't ask anything. We don't even ask the name. We ask just a few things. Do you have a motor? Do you have a bank account? And do you have a cell phone? All the rest doesn't matter. And I said, my God, the driver license, no, it's not my problem. It's the state's problem. And if he's illegal, I don't care. Illegal. And, where he lives, I don't care. So I was really intrigued, because that's how, of course, it's almost like free market, with a very, very strong response. And very inclusive, because we got young people, we got migrants, we got women, some groups that found that are more difficult to find jobs. And then I asked him, but how can you trust your business to someone that you don't know? You don't know where they live, you don't know, have more accurate information about them. And then he said, not true, you're wrong, my friend. I know everything about them because I have their phone started. So I know everything about the bank accounts, where they live, to whom they relate. So I probably know more about them than themselves. So it was kind of, it was an open eye. Another CEO, same group, he was explaining to me that he had few employees, and now drivers and service providers were considered as partners, my associated partners. But strangely, none of them had bonuses or participation profits. And also, they didn't have any type of insurance or sickness benefits or nothing. So, vacations. So, well, digital platforms, let's be frank, they made enormous difference, not only facilitating everyone's life, but also by absorbing a number of workers that had lost their jobs. So really was a lifesaver. But this workforce are now in a kind of gray zone. Not employers, not employees, not partners, and they have the worst of everything. They bear all the risks. So there is no demand if they crash their motor, and they don't have any, type of guarantee. And frankly, what you're seeing is this top-notch 21st century technologies. I mean, the most advanced algorithms reproducing 19th century working conditions. You got people working 60 hours, no guarantees, no nothing. So something needs to be done. See, for me, this is a top agenda in the region. And then by talking to these people, we came up also with this idea of e-formalization. Look, if I know so much about each one of them, why can't we offer, for example, a health insurance plan, that we can spray risks all over, and we can connect them themselves, all these types of things. The tools are available. We can, for example, stimulate participation in the labor market. I had a discussion with another guy. He was an algorithm guy. He said, no, look, my algorithm is blind. I don't care about woman participation, race, immigration. My algorithm doesn't see that. It sees who is the best qualified and available person to deliver this request at this certain point of time. Okay. And then he said, all the rest is government, government to worry about, not me. And then that's when I disagreed. As I disagreed with my guy, the jobs terminate, You can make a difference. Why don't you, you can have a little bit, if you know that it is a very disfavorable market for women, why don't you, put a little thing in your algorithm that perhaps could boost woman participation, And if your algorithm is using child labor, you are also, you share also this responsibility, So sometimes we talk to tech colleagues and they're so focused on the little thing, and they lose the big picture. It's the same guy who said, okay, I'm a job estimator, I don't care. Someone else will put, will think about other things, about the social impact. This is for academics, think tanks, for common to solve. And then that's when I disagree. It's not because if you're working, for example, if you're developing drone technology, it's not because you didn't press the button that you don't share responsibilities of its impact. And there are ways that you can put purpose, then there was the word used in the last panel, into your work, Think about the big picture. Get out of course, you're doing stuff. Most startups, of course, they are developed to solve a problem specifically in their soul. But as much as you can, putting a little bit of purpose, you're doing your part in changing the world or in doing a lot of things. And I have a few ideas about that I would like to finish with that. Okay, but before that, let me talk just a word about teleworking, which is also amazing. Okay, teleworking allowed business continuity. Punto. Okay, so they were very important now for people to keep their jobs, the business continuing and working. We did some estimates as well. Around 23% of workers migrated to telework in the second quarter of 2020, and that's between 20 and 30% of the waged labor force, those who have a regular wage formal workers. And before that, 3% were working somehow. So it was a big jump, and now they're returning back. But of course, teleworking is not for everyone. So most part of the population, informal sector, etc., they didn't have this possibility. And that's why the impact, the price was disproportional and enhanced inequality. So what you see, people with formally employed, salaried people with high education level, stable employment, relationship at the managerial level, they were doing telework. But the most part of the people, self-employed, young workers, informal workers, low qualification, simply out. Okay, and also important to highlight the difficulties in terms of access. So there was a lot of in many places low level of information technology, and so that was. So just to finalize now, and then I just got a teacher's message. We need ideas. So we have desperate about ideas to improve our outcomes in terms of quality, in terms of poverty, in terms of employment. Okay, and this, we count on you, to help us out on that. Education, big thing. Child labor. Now we can trace an avocado that you're buying, perhaps a market in New York, to where it was produced in Mexico, to the farm, using blockchain technology. Violence and harassment against women, discrimination, social integration, digital inclusion, and green transition. Now, these are some areas that need solutions now, and solutions that are very important for now, because we are losing a lot of time. We lost time in the pandemics. We lost years in terms of child labor and, for example, inclusion of women labor market. And now we need to push the sustainable development accelerator. We count on it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Vinicius. We are really grateful for your thought leadership and your time that you spent with us at the Latin America Future Summit. We are glad that you could join us today and share with the audience your interesting perspectives as well. Thank you so much. Okay, so we'll now transition to our headline speaker and the CEO of Global Startup Ecosystem, Christine Tim, to give her closing remarks. Welcome, Christine.
Hello. Thank you so much, Stan, for the introduction. I could take it from here and everyone can see my slides, okay?
Yes, we can.
All right. Awesome. Awesome. So hello everyone, and thank you so much. I can't believe we're already at the close of the second annual Latin America Future Summit. As Stan introduced, my name is Christine and Tim. I'm the founder and CEO of GSC, and of course, many of you have seen me at different parts of ecosystem gatherings like this one over the past couple of years. And I must say, this edition of the Latin America Future Summit has come with both high expectations, but also, as you could tell from the speakers, we're also having this dialogue during a very unique time, economically, socially, culturally around the world. And as we address the 2022 theme, the investment ecosystem and the future tech hubs of Latin America, I hope all of you as members and stakeholders of the Latin America ecosystem for whatever country that you're logging in from, was able to take the feedback, the insight, the perspectives that the speakers were sharing today about not only the opportunities, but also the challenges that the region is facing right now during this economic transition, post-pandemic reality, that we as entrepreneurs, we as ecosystem builders, we as participants in the tech and business ecosystem of Latin America can make changes, can make a positive footprint to set this region up for the future. And so I do want to, of course, thank our 2022 speakers. Please give a virtual clap, a virtual round of applause for their participation today. I know it was not easy for them to take the time and the consideration to really come here and share what they're seeing on the ground. Some of our speakers came from as far as Brazil, Mexico, Argentina, Chile, Mexico, I mean, all across the Latin America region to share what they're seeing on the ground. And I hope that the insight prove useful to our audiences who logged in. And I do want to conclude by reiterating GSC's role in empowering ecosystems around the world not only comes in the form of these summits of bringing people together, but also the consistency of bringing these ecosystems together on a regular basis. Many of you are aware we kicked off Latin America Future Summit last year, a digital edition with 15 speakers and 1,000 global delegates. And here we are back again for the second edition with 20 speakers and close to 2,000 plus delegates. So the community is growing, the awareness of the issues and topics and discussions that we expressed today is also gaining momentum. So I want to thank everyone for being a part of this year's edition. And of course, I look forward to seeing you all in the next edition. And even reiterating GSC's work across different regions, as many of you are aware, GSC has a regional series where we bring together individuals and stakeholders across Africa with the Africa Future Summit, the Caribbean Future Summit for Caribbean islands, and of course, Latin America Future Summit, the one that we're here today, to really push forward the theme of Latin America and what's happening in that region specifically. And so I do want to thank everyone again for being a part of this amazing edition, the second edition, and being a part of the dialogue. I hope that this was more than a conversation, that it inspired you, that there is opportunity despite challenges, and that the cycles of what we're experiencing as entrepreneurs in this ecosystem has happened before, and we will get to the other side. And for our speakers who joined us today, please take the time to understand that there was one quote that one of the speakers shared that I really admire, that she shares, an African proverb. If you don't think you have influence, try sleeping with a mosquito in the room, was the quote. And I will conclude with that quote because I think it's such a powerful message about the power of an individual to believe in impact, sustainability, and really making a difference within your region in whatever capacity that you see is best fit for your community. Just do it. Just go for it. And so I want to conclude there and say again, thank you all for being a part of the second edition of the Latin America Future Summit. We look forward to seeing you next year for the third annual edition. Let's keep the energy up. Let's share what you hear today through social. You can hashtag Latin America Future Summit and GSC, and look forward to seeing you next year, of course, with great updates and great solutions and great case studies of what you've done to make your imprint on the region of Latin America. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you so much, Christine. And you'd all agree with me, this has been an exciting session today. We are thankful to our keynote speaker, Shelley Purcell of HubSpot, Vinicius Pinheiro of the International Labour Organization, and also to the panelists we had on today. We are thankful to all those speakers that joined our spotlight panels today, including Angelina Ramos, Carolina Caro, Holly Duckworth, Paloma Zapata, John Bruno, and Vivian Alvarez. We are extremely grateful to our global partners as well, who have supported us to host this second annual edition. And finally, we are thankful to you, our audience, for joining us for today's session, and we hope to see you again next year. Thank you all so much for joining us for the second annual edition of the Latin America Future Summit. You can continue the conversation going on social media using the hashtag Latin America Future Summit and the Global Startup Ecosystem. Thank you all so much. Have a great day.
Our diaspora continues to be one of the country's greatest underutilized assets for this country. The diaspora can become a major player in Jamaica's future development.
There are several factors for consideration, such as infrastructure, high performance, sports tourism, and job opportunities. Technology will be at the forefront of each of these factors that matter in sports.
So what Caribbean Export has recognized is that we have to really put business at the center of the economic drive for the Caribbean region.
And after all, if we're going to try to woo these investors, we need to ensure we have the enabling framework, not just the human resource endowment, but the legislative framework, the infrastructure, the ease of doing business.
Now, here's the point. It's not what you do that makes a festival, it's how you do it. Wherever you are, whatever the size of your community or its resources, you can create a science festival to promote a vision of your community's future.
Now, it is well known and an established fact that the Caribbean is the most tourism-dependent region on the planet.
If you bring the universities and entrepreneurs together, how do you move that research out of the academic faculties into the factories?
I'm Flavio Gonzalez, in charge of international cooperation and promotion of the Embassy of Mexico to Trinidad and Tobago, concurrent with Barbados and Suriname. I congratulate you for participating in this important event.
So I want to start a conversation with everybody involved of just answering this question of how can we bridge the gap of career opportunities as well as entrepreneurial opportunities between the US and the Caribbean. It sounds like everyone here, or Canada and the Caribbean, everyone here has had that dual experience of being in the US and experience in the Caribbean.
This year's theme is going to be from diaspora engagement to investment, connecting to the Caribbean's economic future pillars, tourism, technology, and talent. We are truly excited about this opportunity and hope that all of you from wherever part of the Caribbean that you're logging in from is sharing thought leadership regarding the content that will be shared today during today's multi-hour program.
This year we have, as we continue to speak about trade.
Wherever you're joining in from, thank you for joining us as we explore the theme Future Tech Hubs of Latin America with this first annual Latin America Future Summit.
Each country in LATAM has a different reality, so we need to work closely with the operators, with the government, with the universities to really develop a strong ecosystem.
So, it's not about how small you are, it's just understanding the opportunity and equipping yourself with the tools to take advantage of those opportunities.
So I realized that if there is not a skill in the market, I needed to begin to do something to have that skill if I want to grow in the future. So
we are willing to hear these innovations, and we would like to partnership with these kind of companies.
You see that the business world today, brands face new types of customers with high digital capabilities.
Objective, our mission is to make sure everybody that want to have a job should have a job, and not any type of job, but what we call a decent job, a job with quality. And so
the industry-specific solutions have unquestionably become the cloud's next big revolution.
Alter Global is an early-stage venture capital firm investing in emerging market startups, pre-seed through Series A, in Latin America, the Middle East.
And there's a lot of talent, right? I think we're catching up on that, and we are also demonstrating that we have the right culture, the right talent, and the right ingenuity, right, for making those changes happen.